When I first heard the story of Tom Brenneman, I just knew that I had to talk to you about it today. I wanted to talk to the entire congregation about it today, on Yom Kippur, on our holiest day. Because this Tom Brenneman story is just so important, and it connects with each and every one of us in our own way. Tom Brenneman was a sportscaster for Major League Baseball. He called Major League Baseball games for 33 years. Now, if you can remember, before the pandemic, there used to be 162 games in a Major League Baseball season. And you know that there are at least 9 innings in a game, not including extra innings, which means that Tom Brenneman called at least 48,114 innings of professional baseball, not counting playoff games and not counting extra innings. And he had a very special relationship with the Cincinnati Reds organization. He called their games for 14 years. And this connection was generational. His father, Marty Brenneman, had called games for the Reds for years. And like Elias and David and Mikey, a father-son situation, when Marty retired, Tom Brenneman took over, made door. So, Tom Brenneman builds up his goodwill, his good name, his reputation for all those innings over all those years. And then he loses it all in 8 seconds with 8 words. He's announcing a doubleheader on August 19th, just a month ago. The Kansas City Royals were playing at Cincinnati, the Royals-Reds doubleheader. He's announcing he's in the midst of the first game, and for some reason he does not realize that his mic is on. It's a so-called hot mic situation, where the speaker doesn't know that it's on, but it's on, and therefore he says something in an unguarded moment. And what he says in an unguarded moment, which is captured by the mic, is a homophobic slur. He calls a certain city, quote, one of the blank capitals of the world, where blank was the homophobic slur. Well, reaction on social media was immediate and furious. Reaction of the Cincinnati Reds was immediate and decisive. He was suspended then and there in the middle of the doubleheader. They got another announcer to come in after 14 years and announce the game. After 14 years with the Reds and after 33 years in baseball, he's done. For 8 words in 8 seconds. Pause. 33 years. 48,114 innings, at least. Undone by 8 words in 8 seconds. How should we think about that? Well, reasonable people could agree to disagree about whether it was right and just that he's done, resigned indefinitely, immediately for this offense. On the one hand, you know the arguments. On the one hand, we have to have 0 tolerance for hate speech. We Jews of all people have to have 0 tolerance for hate speech, and if somebody uses a slur, 0 tolerance. They're gone, on the one hand. On the other hand, do we really want a world where we are judged by our worst moment? Do we really want a world? I mean, could any of us survive? Could any of us survive if we were publicly shamed on the basis of the stupidest thing that we ever said? We're in the middle of Yom Kippur, we're reading the confessional block 1,000 times. And guess what the most common sin is in the confessional block? The sins of speech, because we all do it. On the third hand, We all say thoughtless things. We all say things that we wish we hadn't said. Most of us do not use slurs. And if he used the slur this time, it was only the first time that he got caught, but probably not the first time that he used it. In any event, we could argue about this till the cows come home. But the truth is, it doesn't matter whether it was right or wrong. The 33 years got filled by 8 seconds because it just is. It just is. He's gone from the Reds. His career is over for the sin of 8 words in 8 seconds. Right or wrong, good or bad, fair or not fair, it just is. Now, how should we think about that? It takes years to build up our goodwill and our good reputation and our legacy, and it can be torn down in seconds. We're in the midst of the season of judgment. We just chanted Unatana Tokef. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. And the best thing that I heard about judgment, the best thing I heard about judgment on one foot, I heard from Andy Stanley, who's the great preacher in Atlanta, and it's very simple. It's one line. It's one line, and it's truth. All of us, he said, are not judged on the basis of our finest chapter. All of us are judged on the basis of our final chapter. All of us are judged not on the basis of our finest chapter, but on our final chapter. Our final chapter has a superpower. It can swallow up the finest chapters. Tom Brenneman had a finest chapter. It lasted 33 years, and it got swallowed up by his final chapter. Now, we see this so clearly in the Torah. In our mother Rebecca, she has a finest chapter. You know this finest chapter. Abraham sends his servant Eliezer to Mesopotamia to try to find the perfect bride for his Isaac. And Eliezer wants to please, and so he prays. He says, hey, God, show me the one. And the one is going to pass the kindness to the camel test. Let the one who sees that I'm thirsty and offers me water also see that my camel is thirsty and also offer the camel water. Well, when Eliezer gets to Rebekah, she says, oh my, you seem thirsty. Here's some water. And Lord, you got a lot of camels. Let me get every one of your camels, plural, lots of water so that they can drink. Ding, 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 ding. She passes the kindness to the camel test. Rebecca has a finest chapter. Problem is, it got swallowed up by her final chapter. The time that she, remember this one, when she lies to her blind husband, and she steals what was Esau's, and she corrupts Jacob's, and she sows such hatred in the family, such hatred. Isaac is furious. You lied to me. Esau is furious. I'm going to kill my brother. Jacob is furious. Mom, what did you do? Oh my God, what did you do? I got to run away. My brother's going to kill me. And he never sees his mother again. Kindness to camel. 100 years ago, nobody in the history of man cares about kindness to camel. She killed her family. That's what they care about. That's what she cares about. That's what the Torah cares about. When our mother Sarah dies, the Torah says Sarah died. When our mother Rachel dies, the Torah says Rachel died. When Rebecca died, no mention, no word, no hint, no mention, no word, no hint of her death or of her burial. And the Midrash picks this up. And the Midrash picks up the silence. And it explains why the Torah is silent. It imagines Rebecca on her deathbed. And her family's not there. She exploded her family. Her family's not there. So there's attendance. And this is her dying wish. Her dying wish. Don't bury me during the day. If you bury me during the day, everybody will see that my family's not there. Isaac won't come, he doesn't talk to me. Jacob won't come, he's in a foreign land, haven't seen him since. Esau won't come, he hates me. If you bury me during the day, the hot mess that is my family will be there for all to see. Bury me at night. Which is why the Torah makes no mention of her death or of her burial. Rebekah's final chapter, the explosion part, swallowed up her finest chapter, the kindness to the camel part. What does that mean to us in this season of judgment? If we are all judged on the basis of our final chapter, not on the basis of our finest chapter, then what's so important is to make this chapter, the one that we're living now, our finest chapter. Because who knows, it might be our final chapter. Nobody knows how long we've got left. That was always true. It's especially true in the age of COVID-19. If COVID-19 has taught us anything, it has taught us about the proximity, the nearness of death. Death, it's away. If it has taught us anything, it has taught us profound humility before mystery. It has taught us profound humility before that which we cannot control. It has taught us that no matter how rich or how poor, how athletic or not athletic, nobody knows whether this chapter is just another chapter, and we got plenty of chapters left, or whether this chapter might well be our final chapter, in which case, let's make it our finest chapter. The late writer Stephen Covey wrote this classic, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he has in it this marvelous thought experiment. I just love this thought experiment. Imagine, he says, that you go to a small room, it's quiet, nobody's there, no cell phones, no devices, no ringing or pinging, just you. And take a pad of paper and a pen, nothing else, just you. And imagine that you're going to a funeral. And this is pre-pandemic, when people used to go to buildings for funerals. It's a parlor, it's a synagogue, it's a church or a mosque, it's a space. And you get there and it looks like a funeral, and it smells like a funeral, and it feels like a funeral. And you take your seat in the pews, and you realize it's your funeral. That's a thought experiment. And you see the order of service, and there are going to be 4 speakers. There's going to be somebody from your family, and a lifetime friend, and a work colleague, and somebody from the community that you care about. And each of those 4 is going to speak about you. And here's your first question. What do you want them to say about you? What do you want your life story to be from the point of view of your family member, your friend, your work colleague, and your community member? And then here's the second question. Are you living the life now that would inspire them to say that? Is there a match? Is there a confluence? Is there a consilience between the life you're living and the life story that you want told about you? Or is there a gap between the life that you're living and the life story that you want told about you? And if so, what do you have to do to narrow that gap so that your life and the story of your life that you want told about you match up? Now that's a marvelous thought experiment, and I would only add to it one gloss. What is it that you would want those 4 speakers to say about you based on what you do this year in 5781? Because of the power and the primacy of now, of what might be our final chapter. Because there is a flip to this whole Tom Brenneman story. Tom Brenneman's story speaks to the truth that years of good living can be undone by one bad moment, but the flip is also true. Years of undistinguished living can be redeemed by a great moment. All of us, right now, we have the power based on how we live today and how we live this year and what we do in this new year. We have the power to write a whole new chapter, to redeem what needs redeeming, to mend what needs mending, to write a whole new story for ourselves and our world. There was a wonderful show on NPR called Only a Game, stories about sports personalities, which just died this past Saturday after 27 years. And one of its best shows concerned the relationship between Celtics greats Bob Cousy and Bill Russell. So Bob Cousy and Bill Russell were absolute magic on the court. They were just irresistible. They were invincible. They were unbeatable. They were together for 7 years, and 6 of those years they won NBA championships. On the court, magic. But off the court, there was texture and complexity. There was brokenness that needed to be mended, and it took 50 years to mend it. Cousy and Bill Russell played together from 57 to 1963. And as all of you know, that was the heart of the civil rights struggle. And Bill Russell was an early prototype of the athlete activist. He would denounce racial injustice in America. He would demand racial justice in America. Famously, even though he was a Boston Celtic, he called Boston a racist city. And vandals broke into his home in suburban Boston, and they vandalized his home. And they wrote all kinds of racist graffiti on the walls of his house. Russell was winning championships, and Russell was in personal anguish over racism. And Bob Cousy was clueless, did not see, did not care, did not reach out. This climaxed on the evening of October the 17th, 1961. The Celtics were playing an exhibition game in Lexington, Kentucky, and they all went to have dinner at the hotel restaurant. And there were 11 Celtics, 7 white Celtics, and 4 black Celtics: Bill Russell, Casey Jones, Sam Jones, and Satch Sanders. And management comes to the table and says to the 4 black athletes, "You can't eat here. We don't serve black people at this establishment." So the 4 black athletes got up from the table and they said, "Well, if we can't eat here, we're not going to play basketball in this city." And they went home. And the 7 white Celtics ordered their dinners like nothing had happened, ate their dinners, and played the game. That was in 1961. In 1963, Bob Cousy retires, and he's an NBA Hall of Famer and just widely regarded as one of the best point guards in the history of the sport. But after he retires, it starts to gnaw on him. And this was going to be the theme of his life for the next 50 years. I should have done more. Bill Russell was hurting, and I did not see, and I did not care, and I did not regard, and I did not note, and I did not do, and I did not reach out. I should have done more. And he's particularly vexed by that horrible evening. Why did we eat that dinner? Why did we play that game? What was I thinking? Roll the film forward 40 years. It's now 2001. And Bob Cousy is interviewed by ESPN. And they want to know about basketball. They want to know, hey, you won 6 NBA championships in 7 years. What was the secret of your basketball success, the secret of your basketball chemistry? And Cousy is talking about this, and all of a sudden he pivots. And he stops talking about basketball. And he says, you know what? I was really not a very good friend. And I was not a very good teammate. My teammate, Bill Russell, was in anguish. And I didn't see, and I didn't care, I should have reached out and I didn't. And on that camera in 2001, he starts to sob. He just starts to cry. Roll the film forward. Bob Cousy is now 87 years old, and he's a widower living alone in his home in Worcester. This fleet point guard now walks with a cane, and he has nothing but time. And the one thing he keeps thinking about is, I should have done more. So he writes a letter, a handwritten letter, to his teammate, Bill Russell. And this is what he writes at the age of 87, more than 50 years after their work. He writes, I know, Russ, I know we've never been pen pals, and I'm sorry about that. It was my responsibility to reach out to you and hopefully share the pain that you had during that period, or to minimize it. However, I did not do that. I am so sorry. The story of Bob Cousy's teshuvah at 87, I should have done more, inspired a segment on Only a Game that first aired in 2018, and it just aired again a few weeks ago because it was one of the best received segments in the history of the 27 years of the show, which means that the story of Bob Cousy is not what he did as a basketball player from 1957 to 1963. That is ancient history. And the story of Bob Cousy is not that he was clueless in 1961. He was. But the story of Bob Cousy is that he got that he was clueless. He got that he did not see Bill Russell and his other black teammates' pain, and that he should have done more, and he didn't. And he was sincerely sorry about that and tried to make amends. His story is a story of teshuvah, which means that the Tom Brenneman story and the Bob Cousy story are flip sides of the same coin. They both stand for the proposition that years of living can get undone in a moment. Now, there is a cruel aspect to it. There's a cruel aspect that 33 years of living can get undone in 8 seconds. That is cruel, but it just is. But there is also a hopeful and helpful aspect, that we are never too old. It is never too late to right what was wrong, to redeem what needs redemption, and to write a whole new story for ourselves and for our world. Let's make the chapter that we are in, let's make the chapter of 5781 our finest chapter yet. Gemar Tov.